Hello, everyone. This is 16-Bit Jeff. I'm part of the Game Riffers, and this is our first episode known as Riff Table. Riff Table is going to be an ongoing discussion series that myself and the others of the Game Riffers are going to discuss about current topics in the gaming industry. And joining me this week, we have...
Oh, by the way, hi everybody, this is RRPG.
Yes. And now, what is going to be our first topic for this ongoing show?
Oh, the first topic, you say? Well, that's actually going to be a very, very good one to, deliver our 2 cents on.
Yes.
Or what we're going to be talking about. And as of recent, I'm sure most of you have been probably aware of how bad Capcom has been doing for the past few years or so, and how much they currently have in their bank as of right now.
Oh, yeah. For those who don't know, due to the... lack of quality that Capcom has been releasing with regard to this generation, they only have 152 million in the bank left.
Oh my god.
Yes. Now, let's talk about how they came to this, because there's been a lot of entities of what proceed into where they are right now. First off, the big one, DLC, whatever it was. Really overpriced DLC in regards to costume packs for their fighters, whether it be, Street Fighter 4 or any variation of that franchise. Or recently with a most recent one, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. I want to hear your opinion on that first.
Hold on a second. Okay, my thoughts on the whole matter? Okay, well, first of all, I gotta say that, I'm not really too big of a fan of what they're doing as of right now. I feel that ever since they have neglected us ever since the departures of many of the Capcom's most creative talent is how the company currently got to the position of where they are right now and trying to cheat its customers with even its loyal servers or its fan base or whatever with practices with that we are not even that very akin to. And I will say in all respect that what they're doing is just wrong. I mean, I don't like the way how they're trying to think that DLC is the future and within their company and trying to milk it with most of their popular games that they're just milking the hell out of right now. I mean, we've seen that with Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, and even version 2012, and now possibly for the upcoming Ultra Street Fighter 4, as well as what they did with Street Fighter Cross Tekken.
Yeah.
Oh my god, it's like... Capcom, you have several other franchises aside from just the more popular ones like Street Fighter and Resident Evil. I mean, you have Mega Man, which you have neglected to give us an actual game ever since you canceled both Mega Man Universe, Mega Man Legends 3, as well as the Maverick Hunter X or Mega Man X a reboot that Armature Games was planning on doing. It's like you didn't even give us anything to keep your most beloved and most top IP, flowing out with games like we have seen what Inafune has done on a yearly basis. That's why he kept giving us Mega Man games that we wanted every year, because he knew how to treat the franchise, and he knew that he wouldn't even want to keep fans neglected with, games. And the only last game that we ever saw from them, or saw that he was a part of, was Mega Man 10 on the WiiWare, PSN, and Xbox Live Arcade, and it's not good that we've been, under this for 3 years without a Mega Man game for quite a while. I mean, we've seen some relevance of Mega Man in other titles like Marvel vs. Capcom 3 with Zero, but that's still not enough for a solid Mega Man game now, is it? And also, and some of the other franchises too, like where's the next Dino Crisis? Where's the next Onimusha? And I know I hate to say this, Jeff, but even though you did like DMC for Devil May Cry, but still, I would like to see something from the Japanese studio to actually give us a proper 5th installment from their take on Devil May Cry, maybe with Ninja Theory or, possibly another Western developer working on another entry in DMC. But I'm just saying, you have so much stuff in the pipeline with your franchises that you could have delivered, and you could have made more money than where you currently are now. But rushing your products out and only keeping certain franchises within the pipeline instead of the ones that we've been craving for all this time, yeah, that is a recipe for disaster. So I am not really, really in favor with what you're doing. And if you keep going down this route with your DLC, it's only going to continue to bite you in the ass, and you probably will not survive within the next maybe 2 or 3 years at best.
Right. And I agree with where you're coming from. Like, going back to Devil May Cry we brought up, yeah, I like DMC at DMC for what it was. Granted, I've been part of the franchise since its inclusion into the industry back in 2001.
Of course.
However, with the implementation of how Dante was this, yeah, he was a badass character. He was an awesome character, but I didn't like he was this sarcastic, snarty character that felt like, oh, I can't be touched by anything because I'm a badass demon hunter. You know, like, I do like that. At the same time, it just felt like it felt like shallow. It felt like I knew it was a parody of itself in some ways, regardless, but at the same time, I felt like it was a shallow characterization. However, I will state this: from what we've got from Ninja Theory, and granted, I did like DMC for what it was. There was a lot of things in that game I did not like.
Right.
For example, I did not like how young Dante, that universal interpretation of Dante was presented. Like, I thought the original Dante was bad. No, this one's worse.
Oh, of course.
Like, I can take the original Dante because he's a prick and he knows it and he's actually cares because of that human side of him. But at the same time, I do like that idea of that he was a Nephilim, a hybrid between an angel and demon. I do like that idea, a nice twist to it. At the same time, I don't care that he's this, oh, I care about nothing in life, so why should I care about myself or anyone's around me? You know what I mean? There's a lot of things I liked about DMC. Like, the more I think about it, I'm not saying that Ninja Theory did a bad job. They did a good job of what they did right. It's just like, if they make a sequel, they need to implement on what they need to improve a lot of things more than what they did with that game.
Oh, of course.
However, going back to what you're saying, I agree with you on one thing.
What?
And I've been saying this at launch. It's just at the launch of that game. It's like, I do not want to see the other universe, the original timeline, to go away. I don't want the reboot to be the only thing, tied to the DMC universe. I want those two coexist. Like in the next 2 or 3 years, we get DMC 5. Then that next 2 or 3 years after that game's release, we get DMC 2, Devil May Cry 2.
Of course.
You know what I mean? Just have those two universes coexist so you can have a stabilized fan base. Like, you have a fan base that it's been with the franchise for years, even from its first inclusion, that will be happy that they still have their original interpretation. Well, you have these fan base that just got to the game from the reboot's interpretation, and they'll be happy with that. You know what I mean? You'll have a better overall fan base, and even more fans that will be coming into it and liking whichever interpretation you have of that universe.
Right.
Do I see that happening? No, but I do see that happening if Capcom goes under this route, because they need to do a lot of drastic things.
Oh, of course.
And you forgot one thing too.
What's up?
This also brings up one big thing too that me and you highly disliked about. Vastly making games on iOS devices, whether it's iOS or Android. Here's my interpretation. I get where they're coming from. The Japanese market, it makes sense because it's popularized in that market.
Right.
But that does not make it accessible for worldwide audiences.
Of course. I mean, if you port games to the iOS, you're just to obtain short-term profits, you're still going to get a loss down in the long run if you just, bank on that as of right now and have no long-term plans for it.
Like, that's the thing that really annoys me at Capcom, and that's one thing I gotta give both Sony and especially Nintendo credit. Like this whole thing we're talking about, like you brought up earlier too, like these all-stars that we once knew and loved from Capcom, we still do too, but we knew from Capcom, like Shinji Mikami, the creator of Resident Evil and Dino Crisis, KJ Inafune, not the main creator, but the main head, like the grandfather of the Mega Man franchise,
and especially Hideki Kamiya, who made possibly my favorite game that he's ever created when working at Capcom, which is Okami.
Well, not that, but he was the creator of the franchise we just talked about, Devil May Cry. He was the creator of
Beautiful Joe.
Beautiful Joe as well too, and Okami, and I don't know if it was him or Shinji Mikami, but one of my personal favorite games from the time tenure of Closer Studios, God Hand.
Oh, yeah, it was Shinji Mikami.
It was, Well, thank you. Thank you for letting me know.
And not to mention, Kamiya was the director for RE2 to get him into the line of work of directing games. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's probably my favorite entry in the classic trilogy that was on the PS1.
I'm like, when we're talking about classic trilogy, it's between 2 and 3 for me. But my favorite, like, from after that generation, my favorite still in the 3D realm is actually Code Veronica for its story, for its overall narrative, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But getting back to the topic, this is what I'm trying to get at. It's just like, this is the thing that really pisses me off with Capcom. It's just like, since those people have left, they didn't try to find successes with those younger, new type of people that they hired, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, everything's fine. That's one thing I love about Nintendo. You know, we've talked about, you know, behind the scenes about what's gonna happen when Shigeru Miyamoto, you know, up and leaves. What happens when AJ Numa leaves?
Or what happens when Iwata leaves?
Exactly. You know what? That's one thing I like about Nintendo. And this isn't saying like, oh, this company's better. This is one thing I like, that they're thinking strategically, is the fact of how to replace these people in the future, which people to get as these successors. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing it fully right now, but they do have it in the back of their mind, and they are starting to plan. And that's one thing I like about Nintendo and Sony, and especially Nintendo, because it sounds like those two companies have more of a financial and structured future than, say, Capcom. That's the thing that really annoys me at Capcom, is that they haven't tried to find the next Hideki Kamiya, or the next Shinji Mikami, or the next Keiji Inafune to revive those properties we just talked about. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
And that's another thing, too, that I talked about, like, that we were talking about. Where's the next Dino Crisis? You know, a lot of people want that, too, because, you know, it's funny. You and I both hated Resident Evil 6 for what it was. But we can't deny that the gameplay was right. It just wasn't for the right IP. The implementation of the action commands, especially the gameplay overall, that would have worked perfectly in Dino Crisis, to be honest.
Yeah, and that was another thing that I wanted to bring up, too, is that, you know, when you bring up new gameplay elements to an already established IP, you're, in a way, creating an identity crisis for that IP to begin with.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a look. You know, let's take a look at the gameplay change in the Resident Evil franchise ever since RE4. And I know you may not like RE4, but I still regard it as a really good Resident Evil game because it went for that action, but at least it still kept in the elements of survival horror.
Exactly. That's why I don't fully hate the game. It's just I didn't like the route that it was becoming. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I guards in Resident Evil 4. But continue.
But yeah, and then next came was RE5, and I will, and they obviously the biggest kicker was trying to implement co-op into the either in the main campaign or in Mercenaries or in the Mercenaries Versus or whatever, and it was a step in the right direction for adding 2-player co-op, but it didn't even feel like an RE game at all. It didn't even feel dark and scary. It was definitely a step in the wrong direction in terms of atmosphere. But then when RE6 came about, it got back to the atmosphere with what we love about Resident Evil, but there were so many gameplay elements that it just is like, okay, are you going for an action game, a survival horror, or just, guns a-blazing?
Basically, you're saying comparing from RE5 to RE6, with RE6's gameplay changes, it felt like 1 step forward, 3 steps backward.
Yes.
I agree, yeah. I mean, I did like what they were trying to do with Resident Evil 6. I mean, Leon's campaign I still think is his best. The overall arcane environment in the game, whether you're looking at Chris's campaign, or Leon's, or the new character that's supposed to be...
Wesker's son.
Yeah, thank you.
Jake.
Spoiler alert, but Jake Mueller.
Mm-hmm.
I did like the atmosphere. I did like some of the narrative in the game, but there were a lot of problems I had with Resident Evil 6. Like, for example, like that gameplay, it's just like what we were just talking about. It was like a 1 step forward, because I like the fact that you were able to finally move and shoot, something that really annoyed me, like with the past 2 Resident Evil titles, especially with 5.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't like they heavily focused on melee components, you know what I mean?
You want to know a game that was actually a step in the right direction after RE4? Was Revelations.
I agree, yes. I say that game is toe-to-toe with Resident Evil 4, to be honest.
Yes.
And, whoever was that team inside Capcom, I think they should be the next ones to do Resident Evil 7. And there's another thing too, and this is kind of like, I don't know if this is unfair to say, but this is another reason why I dislike Resident Evil 6. I always thought that, especially at the end of how Resident Evil 5 closed that whole chapter and the whole, conflict between the Redfields and everyone else that was part of the story's members with Umbrella, that 6 was going to be a reboot.
Mm-hmm.
So it just feels like it's just going to be, like, from 6 to now on. After I played 6, it feels like, there's just going to be another rehash of, like, this government's conspiracy, all this other crap, you know what I mean?
And not to mention, it didn't even give, it didn't even seem like there was an organization, aside from being called Neo Umbrella, but it's just like, there wasn't, like, any powerful organization, like Tricell, for instance, backing up the terrorist threat on the planet or whatever. Because we did see little bits and pieces of that, and that definitely seemed like a worthy successor company for what Umbrella did in their practices, but we just only got it through one movie and one game. That was it.
Mm-hmm.
But also, another thing I want to mention too, and the company also needs to be more and more precise and more careful with who they choose to outsource their IPs, especially with with Western developers. That's one of the reasons why I liked when Inafune was like the global manager or global director at the time at Capcom before he departed.
Yeah.
Is that he actually knew the right people for the right properties. It's like he took his time to identify who would be best suited for certain properties, and that's why we had Blue Castle Games, now called Capcom Vancouver, who worked on Dead Rising 2, and that proved to actually be a very worthy sequel. And
definitely.
And even with Ninja Theory, with the DMC Devil May Cry reboot, sure, it may not have been people's cup of tea, but, it kept in vein with what Devil May Cry was about, and even tried some new elements that were never even done for the series before.
Right, exactly. I definitely agree. And it's kind of funny, too, because that's, in some ways, how you see Inafune still in regards to 3 years later after his leave from Capcom with Concept.
Mm-hmm.
We see what he did with... what was that game? Soul Sacrifice for PlayStation Vita. That was a correct concept by him and his team, but that was really developed over at Sony Computer Japan.
Yes, and not to mention the current project he's working on with Spark Unlimited and Team Ninja with Yaiba Ninja Gaiden Z. Yeah, that's a really, really awesome... I'd say it would be more of an honor for him to, have a chance to work on that franchise. I think that's like the second franchise after the Minish Cap, the Legend of Zelda game that he's worked on that was outside of what he worked on in his life.
That's true, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like one game, like, this is the only... It's sad to say, but this was the only thing that I gotta give Capcom credit, excluding, reviving the fighting franchise. Of games like Street Fighter, all that genre basically. But going back to Capcom, there was one thing that I liked that they did internally inside the company is that they were looking towards, Western support in regards to developers here in the U.S. to do their IPs. It's just how piss poor managed it was.
Oh, what?
Here's the thing. I loved DMC for what it was, but looking back, and I'm not bashing Ninja Theory, I loved them as a developer. I liked Enslaved. That one is still one of my favorite, and honestly, most underrated games that came out this generation 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
However, looking at just Ninja Theory, of whom they are, they would have been better suited for a reboot in regards to Onimusha than, say, DMC, to be honest.
I agree. And also... and going back to the iOS and social gaming and, tablet games,
yeah,
we cannot have the, games that we've been yearning for end up on those platforms. I mean, I would rather see them as, like, digital downloads for, like, a home console storefront, like, the Wii U eShop or even the PlayStation Network or Xbox Live Arcade.
Yeah.
So that way, they're not wasting development costs, and they can actually... have smaller games on those, on those systems, so that way they'll stay financially stable. That's why games like DuckTales Remastered actually performed well on the...
Because it was originally a digital only, and since it did so well, they're saying, okay, you know what, did well, we're going to release it as a retail game now for all consoles.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you with that, because I feel the same way if that's what they're future fighting properties should be in regards to Street Fighter. Hell, even with Darkstalkers, I've been asking for Darkstalkers 4 since way back in 99/2000 after 3 was released.
I would say for any property that, whether if it's like a new Resident Evil or a new Dino Crisis, they need to take a step back with the technology and make it like in the vein of maybe like a PS1 game or a Super Nintendo game or even a PS2 game for the service. So that way, as I said, they're not wasting development costs, and they'll keep things really constrained. And, most of the time, these games that have limitations, they actually prove to actually be more fun than games that have these huge, ambitious capabilities.
Agreed. And that's the sad thing, too, that I think that Capcom in the butt this generation is that they were being too ambitious.
Oh, yes.
And it's sad to say because that's another downfall I saw that not only happened to Capcom, but the majority of Japanese developers and publishers during this generation due to them not being suited and understanding what the
consumer
with the graphical implementations of what HD gaming was. Like I stated earlier when we were talking to ourselves, that I think that's where Japan has had a rough suit with. It's like they didn't have that full time of understanding, like, okay, this is how like a Western engine like Unreal works, like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of makes me wonder whether or not if game engines like Unreal should have even gone to Japan. Japan should have probably had its own engine. Like, I know Capcom had the MT framework, but that's an outdated game engine as of right now.
But at the same time, for it being an outdated game engine, I gotta say, it's kind of funny we'll bring up DMC again, but when you compare DMC 4 to DMC Devil May Cry, I mean, if you look between those two games, I would say MT Framework is a more impressive engine than, say, Unreal 3, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and
that game is like, what, 4 to 5 years old at best, right?
Oh, of course, and also you also have to take into consideration that the Unreal Engine is more suited for PC, so that's why you're going to get the smoother frame rate. That's why the PC version of DMC Devil May Cry can actually run at 60 frames a second.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, whereas the PS3 and 360 versions, or the high-end consoles, they actually run at a slower frame rate, like 30 frames a second at best. Because, with PC gradually getting more powerful every year, it's no wonder why the technology within consoles is still, at like a stalemate before the next generation consoles come out. I mean, sure, they may get better when the new ones come out, but how well will they be able to handle the newer engines or even the newer technology for PCs when they release down the line?
Exactly. No, that is a good point.
Mm-hmm. So it kind of becomes a catch-22 for the console manufacturer and even game developers who develop for the consoles in general. How can you optimize the game for the performance of, the current generation or the next generation hardware?
Yeah, that's true, and that's one thing I hope with the upcoming Unreal Engine 4 from Epic. That's more stabilized for both, implementation in regards to PC gaming and, more importantly, console gaming too. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's more streamlined in development in a developmental ecosystem than it was with the third installment.
Right. And also, I think another thing what Capcom needs to actually do, and I know that they do have some properties out there that are still really high selling and that can help them survive, like Monster Hunter, for instance. That game has sold like nearly 3 million copies in Japan, so that does count as a critical and commercial success for the company.
Oh, true, of course, but I think I get where you're coming from. It's just like, even though that's the only property that's succeeding them these days, that should not make it a success for Capcom. They need to make those other important, and I'm not trying to sound like a snide dick, but this is why I feel like, I think the other properties like Street Fighter, Darkstalkers, all these other legacy IPs that they created, I think they should put into more creativity and push them more than with Monster Hunter, you know what I mean? Like,
they should take a rest for now and come back when something new is ready.
Exactly.
Yes, I do agree. And going back to oversaturation with the certain franchises, like with Street Fighter 4, it's been done to death. It's like, okay, I'm getting sick and tired of Street Fighter 4. Please stop. But anyway, So, but yeah, and also another thing that I think that Capcom needs to do in order to survive, I think they're gonna, for future games, if they really want to still stay within the gaming industry, I think they need to partner up with first-party divisions like Nintendo and Sony when delivering their newer games.
To be honest, and I can see where you're coming from. It would be a smart idea for them to be first party, but I would rather have them be second party.
That's where I'm coming from. Partnering up with them. Because with the current money that they have, 152 million, that's not enough to fund and for the publishing and development of a lot of other games that they may have down the pipeline.
Yeah. Now, this is a hypothetical, but it may turn out to be factual in the next couple of years, for all I know, because from what we heard from the CEO, I don't have the quote, but when he said that when we found out they only had 152 million, we found out that their same strategy still be the same strategy they pulled out the reign of the whole of this generation, which was more DLC and more loose crap that we wanted from these IPs. What I'm getting at is this, and it's a hypothetical one too again. Which assets and which IPs will go to which company?
That's a good question. I can definitely see something like Mega Man going to Nintendo, something like Devil May Cry going to Sony, because it originally started out as a Sony property.
Yeah.
And I could definitely see Resident Evil, maybe Sony.
I would say Sony, because excluding the Sega Saturn during that time, it did originate as a PlayStation property as well too. So I would say Sony too, and I don't think it will go to Microsoft, as we already found out recently with their talks and Mikami way back when 4 was in development. So, But with Monster Hunter, obviously that'll become a Nintendo property.
Oh yeah, I definitely see that. Also, Dino Crisis, Sony. Onimusha, definitely Sony. Okami, I definitely think that has a better hand with Nintendo, as well as Beautiful Joe.
Yeah.
Let's see. God Hand, definitely Sony. Dead Rising, I don't know. Maybe as much as I hate to say it, it seems like Dead Rising did have a better hand with Microsoft, because it originally started out with Microsoft and became a really big successful selling franchise, and it should go with Microsoft instead, and as well as possibly Lost Planet.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Other properties of Capcom, like their fighting franchises, obviously, like they're gonna still be multiplayer, whether it's Street Fighter, Darkstalkers, Rival Schools. Red Earth.
Oh, Red Earth, that's a really underrated IP.
Yeah.
And maybe if they work on some of those remaster some of those Disney games back then. Like with what Way Forward did with DuckTales Remastered, do something like, have Nintendo be a part of it. Because most of those games actually started out on the NES.
The NES, yeah, I agree. Like, it'd be nice to see what we just saw DuckTales Remastered. We saw like a Darkwing Duck remastered, or a Gooch remastered, like from the NES, from the original NES game.
Oh, I would be all for that, because that was the granddaddy of co-op games right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just that they should be. It's just that it's just we're at this point where gaming budgets or development budgets are just going up so high that third parties can't literally survive on their own anymore, and Capcom's no exception to that matter. So they have to be taking different steps or backtracking from ambitions that they want to achieve, and kind of take a step back and get some help for once.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's not wrong to have ambitions and goals, but they need to be realistic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They do need to be.
That's the problem with Capcom this generation.
Yeah. They need
shop too high. They just didn't have any realistic goals.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what they need this generation. They want to survive, like you said. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. They need to take a step back and reprioritize their responsibilities and just take things one step at a time. Don't push yourself forward too much, because if you do that right away, you'll definitely be under a lot of pressure and under a lot of stress that you won't even have any idea with what's going on.
And I know a lot of people say, "Oh, Shohei Yoshida is a crappy CEO for Sony." People say that, "Oh, Iwata is horrible at Nintendo, so is Reggie." You know what? I prefer those three compared to the idiotic moron that has been running Capcom for the past decade?
Yeah, and I even blame, like, if we're talking about Square Enix, I'm talking about Yoichi Wada.
And you know what? Ever since Yoichi Wada was stepped down, that company is starting to get better properly, right?
I would believe so, based on what we've seen, especially with
yes.
with their Japanese franchises.
Exactly.
Like I would say, maybe Dragon Quest VII on the 3DS has actually sold significantly well. It's definitely one of the high sold 3DS games for the system as of right now, and definitely for Capcom, and definitely for Square Enix, but.
Square Enix, yeah.
Yeah, and what we've seen with Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13, as well as the upcoming Final Fantasy 15 and Kingdom Hearts 3, it's like, wow, this is definitely, being a step in the right direction for, games that we actually want to see, and in the direction that we want to see them actually evolve for the better.
And I'm agreeing too, because I think that's what needs desperately to happen to Capcom, is that, ending all this discussion for now, is that I think that's what Capcom desperately needs. It needs a complete corporate restructure.
Yes.
Starting off with the higher-ups, because whoever has been running that company for the past decade, CEO, has been doing nothing but ruining that company to the ground.
Mm-hmm. And also, for bigger properties, like maybe like with the recently released Dragon's Dogma, as well as the new Deep Down, if you're going to push those to be really big projects, don't milk them to death. Wait till maybe after 3 or 4 years before you get a new installment out. So that way you'll have enough time to do a lot of planning, and that way you'll be taking your time, and you'll put out a really good quality product. And that's another thing that they need to do too, is put in more quality within their games that they put out.
I agree.
Yeah. But anyway, to conclude on my end, Capcom, yes. I really do not want to see you go away. But if you just continue to pursue in this ambition with DLC, especially with the atrocious handling of the on-disc DLC practices that you had last year, you're not going to be around much longer. And if you keep doing what you're doing with putting your games on smartphones or tablets or even on social gaming sites, it's like, no, it's only going to, destroy you in the end. It's like you're destroying yourself internally. It's like you want to go away. No, I don't want that to happen.
God forbid we don't want another THQ scenario.
Yeah, and it's really sucks to know that a company that we once loved when we were growing up, who put out key titles from various different franchises that were all very appealing to the eye, in the many different genres. Now they've ended up in this circle of obscurity, which is leading to their ultimate demise.
But we like to know in the comments of what you people think. Do you guys think that Capcom has a chance to survive for the next couple of years, or do you think they're doomed to begin with? Leave your comments in the comment box below. If you like what you listen to, please click that like button. As always, subscribe, because besides doing these from now on, we also do Let's Plays. And hey, we have some Let's Plays lined up for later this week, so maybe want to catch up.
Yes.
But as for me, I'm 16-Bit Jeff.
I'm Double RPG.
And we'll catch you next time on Riff Table. Later.
Later, gamers.